Hey guys, what's going on? My name is the Epic Squid, and I'm here today to show you how to make all of your gaunts and all of your gants inside of your Tyranid army a little unique. So we are going to start off today with David the Devil Gaunt, if you'll focus. So as you can see, David the Devil Gaunt over here looks like every other Devil Gaunt that has ever come before him. And what we're going to do is we're going to make him a little bit more unique. Not with necessarily a paint scheme, although the paint scheme is, it's not Kraken, it's not Leviathan, it is my own paint scheme. But more his posing. We are going to try and change his posing today. So what we're actually going for is this. This is a Devil Gaunt that I prepared earlier. And what I've done, as you can see, is I've bent his tail. It just gives them a little bit more of a unique feel on the battlefield, because otherwise all your Devil Gaunts and all your Gaunts and all your Gants look exactly the same, and I think that's really quite sad. So what I have here is two more. As you can see, this guy right here, he is your plain and simple Devil Gaunt. Nothing special. He's got a nice big strong flat tail. However, his friend over here has got a curling tail, which means it looks like he's maybe, I don't know, going round a corner or something. He's even looking in that direction as well, so yeah, he's probably noticed something off into that direction, and he's turning, and he's going to go and shoot it with a devourer, I suppose, as is the Tyranid way. So yeah, let's get started with that. So here we have Darren the Devil Gaunt, and yeah, the next step is this one. Okay, so I'm here in my kitchen, and these are things that you are going to need, minus the cup, which I forgot myself. Okay, so you are going to need your Devil Gaunt. In this case, his name is Daryl. A pair of long tweezers or forceps or something like that, because obviously you can't put your hand in boiling water. That will hurt a lot. Don't do that at home, kids. Get an adult to help you, but yeah, something long that you can actually grip onto your Devil Gaunt with. I tend to hold it on the carapace, over the shoulders, so it kind of looks a little bit like that. But anyway, I'll go through that in a second. Saucepan. This is just a saucepan that I occasionally warm up beans and stuff in there with. A bit of absorbent kitchen towel or kitchen roll. And a kettle with enough water in to cover about an inch of the bottom of the saucepan. Nothing more than that. Cup, and that is to put cold water in. And what we do with that is we just set the plastic after it's done. After we've melted it slightly. So yeah, I am now going to boil this kettle, and then we will continue with the next step. Okay, so as you can see, we're onto a nice rolling boil here. We can just turn it down just a touch because we don't need it super duper hot, because GW plastic isn't that hard. It's actually quite soft in terms of plastic, which is why the plastic glue works so well. Now, make sure you have a good grip with your forceps. I'm going to go under over like that, because the way you bend it, or the way I bend it at the very least, that's what I'm going to do, is you just put pressure on the bottom of the pan to the tip of the tail, and then the kind of like curl and bend and push towards whichever direction you want the tail to bend. So in this instance, I want it to go kind of what would be northeast if it was a compass face, and that's what I'm going to do. Apparently you can use a heat gun, which obviously cuts out this process entirely of bending the tail with hot water, but if you put the heat gun on the plastic for too long, it will like warp the plastic and make it short and bubbly, and so this way is foolproof. You can't really make a mistake with it, even if you leave it in there for, you know, a good few minutes, which obviously you won't. The actual plastic itself will keep its shape, and it's not going to, you know, set on fire or anything like that. But either way, that's what I'm going for. So we want to put it in for about 5 seconds, just the tail, and make sure the tip of the tail is touching the bottom of the pan, and then what you want to do is you want to just put a little bit of pressure, and as you can see I am moving it, and that should do nicely. drop it into your cold water, like that, and then onto a little bit of absorbent towel. So what we've ended up with is a devil gaunt that looks a little bit like that. Now that gives him a nice unique feel compared to every other devil gaunt that you're probably going to see. Not only that, he will have a, most likely, because you're a human, and you'll probably do things slightly different each time, you will end up with a load of devil gaunts or termagaunts all unique in your army, because the bend in the tail won't be the same on every single one. And I think that's quite cool, especially when it comes to Tyranids, because there's not that much in the way you can do of conversion just straight out the box. You can do conversions. I've got a couple of converted parts. I've used green stuff on one of my Hive Tyrants. And he's got like an octopus Cthulhu face going on. I might even do I might even do a video of painting that, to be honest, because he's quite cool and I've made him myself, so why not? Also, on that one as well, I did actually bend the wings, and I used exactly the same process here. I used a bit more water. I think I used a bigger pan as well, because the Hive Tyrant wings are about, 4 inches long or thereabouts. So, yeah. But it worked exactly the same way. Put them in some water for about 5-6 seconds. I think it actually took a little bit longer because they got that big, thick part where the arm should go. And then, yeah, it put a little bit of pressure on the bottom of the pan, and it curls around. In fact, Shazam. Okay, so as you can see, what I've done is I've curled his wings around. The effect that I was looking for with this one was that he had just come into land, basically, and the air was making his wings bellow out slightly. That's what I was going for. It's really hard to focus because he's black. He's not painted yet, as you can see, but this is the Cthulhu face that I've got going on for him. There's green stuffed it on there. Oh, you can't really pick it up. That's a damn shame. Yeah, I will do actually a painting video on this little guy because he's quite cool and I like him. So yeah, but either way, yeah, it seems to work on most, if not all, plastics in the GW range because it is soft. Back on topic. Wait for your gaunt to dry. Of course, if you wanted to dry him, you can. Get a hairdryer on the go or something like that. But I'm just going to let him dry because I'm not in any rush, to be perfectly honest with you. I've got other things to do. So yeah, I'm going to put him on the kitchen roll, and then I will see you when it comes to priming. Priming is easy. You know how to prime. I might even skip that step, to be honest with you. But yeah, and then after that, we'll start the painting process and then the basing process. Okay, so now your Devil Gaunt, or your Gaunt, or your Hormagaunt, or Gant, Termagant, Hormagaunt, whichever it is that you're doing, is now primed. I will show you the paints that you need to get the look of Hive Fleet Typhon, which is, as you can see, is sort of behind you just there. As you can see, in a big unit, actually looks quite good. However, it's very minimal in terms of paints, so you need, in total, 7 paints. That is it. Another reason why I designed this theme, because it was really quick, but it also looks really quite nice and effective on the tabletop, which is, which is the main thing, really. So, yeah. First thing you want to do is you want to get this paint, or the equivalent paint in another brand, doesn't really matter. Celestial Grey. It's a base paint. It's really quite nice, actually, because it's really thick. Extra. And it's perfect for dry brushing, which is going to be our first step. Now, I'm going to use a giant dry brush for no other reason than speed. That's it. There's no reason that I'm using this size dry brush, but I am, because when I'm used to doing so many of these smaller units that I want to get them done fairly quickly, and neatness doesn't really matter all that much when you're doing a horde army, because they sort of get lost within 30 other units, so you're not going to notice, like, oh, that's got a little bit of that on it. No one's going to notice. So yeah, speed, and also it does look quite good. So what you're going to do is you just dry brush like you would any other paint or anything else that you've ever dry brushed. We're probably going to go heavy, a slightly heavy dry brush, and what I mean by that is a normal dry brush you would take off 95% of the paint, and this would just catch the edges and the corners and any of the sharp bits that's on your model. However, because we want this to be the skin we are going to go slightly heavier, so we'll probably remove 80% or 75% of the paint, but not entirely off the brush. Okay, so work that into the bristles and dry off your brush with a little bit of paper, and then we grab our unit, and then you just dry brush like you would any other unit. Celestial Grey does go on incredibly bright. It almost looks like white when you first put it on. It dulls back down to grey though, so don't worry. That's sort of what we're going for, so we don't want to get into every single nook and cranny. Okay, so it's been about 20-ish minutes, and the next stage is the chitin, the carapace. So for that we're going to use Citadel Cantor Blue. Obviously, once again, use Reaper paints, Vallejo, whatever, doesn't matter. But this stuff's 20% off down the road in my local hobby shop, so yeah, 20% off is pretty good. So yeah, give this guy a good shake, just like you would any other paint. And then, because it is a very, very thick paint, once again it's another base colour. Okay, so grab your favoured paintbrush. In this case I'm using the Regiment from Iron Painter. This will be fine because nothing's that small that we're going to be painting, so it's not going to be a problem. Get yourself a palette, because this is such a thick paint, it is definitely well worth watering down. And we just have a little bit of water, maybe a little bit more. Okay, that should be fine. Right, and then we just put this on all of the parts where we want to be blue. So in this case we want the carapace on the back, the carapace on the head, and I believe he's got leg. Yeah, he's got like leg guards. He's also got a little bit of carapace on top of his devourer just there. So yeah, all that's got to be blue. And yeah, fairly simple to paint. All you're doing is you're just painting it on. Because it's got a black undercoat, you should be able to get away with this in one go. And all the black, if there's any black shining through, it'll just kind of add a little bit of definition to the paint itself. So don't worry about putting 2-3 coats on. I don't think it needs it. None of my other units have. And they look fine. So yes, next time you see this little guy, he will have a blue suit on. So see you then. Okay, so now our little Termagant is done. He should look something like that. The next stage, after you've done that, is using Skink Blue, which is one of the Citadel Dry range. Any colour, any brand of paint which has a similar colour to this will work absolutely fine. But it just so happens that I have this, so I'm going to use it. So yeah, all we're doing with this is what you would do with any other dry brush. Not like how we did with the original grey dry brush that we did on there, but like a classic dry brush. So the way the dry paints work, if you've never used them before, get a little bit on the end of your brush, a little bit like that, and then wipe the majority of it off, probably close to about 90–95% of the paint. Then catch the edges of the chitin armour. So if we can get that to focus right there, all we're doing is we're going to brush it like that, and if you look, that it just catches the very, very edge. That's all we're after. You could of course try and extend it further up the chitin, so it kind of travels maybe a little bit further with a few lines and what have you, but you can end up overdoing it and it just looks a bit odd. So my advice would be just do the corners and the sharp edges. It should be absolutely fine. Right, so I'm going to do that on all of the blue areas, so the head, the actual top of the devourer, his legs just there, and of course his back as well. So yeah, join me then and I'll show you the next step. Okay, so the next step is to use Caliban Green And with this, there's only one thing we need to do with it on this particular model. Other models may vary, but with a normal gaunt, all you're going to do is... So we're going to do the same thing as we do with the Cantor Blue. We are going to drop it into a palette and water it down because it is a very thick paint. Just makes it a little bit easier to work with. What we're going to do is we are just going to paint the Devourer. Just like that. So yeah, you're going to just paint the entire Devourer, both sides of this, and then underneath. And yeah, that's it for that particular part. So once that's done, I'll come up with the next stage. You can do these fairly rapidly, to be honest. So yeah, this is the last part. It won't take very long at all. So I'll see you then. Okay, so now our Caliban green on our Devourer has more or less finished drying. What we can do now is move on to the next step, which is a paint called Warpstone Glow, and it's just a lighter shade of green, really. Nothing special about it, it's just a normal layer paint. So what we do with this is a little bit more than we would do with the Caliban. What we're going to do is we're going to go across and all over all of the hooves that the Tyranids have, and the claws. We are going to go over the top of the Caliban green on the Devourer as well, but there's something slightly different that we're going to do with that. So what I'll do is I'll show you where we're going to be painting this. I'm going to put it on a palette again because it is quite a thick paint. Not as thick as Caliban green, but still fairly thick. So what we're focusing on this time with the Warpstone Glow is the green is going to be on the hooves, just there, on the claws at the front, just there. Now this part is completely optional in the scheme that I do, but there are like pipes and wires and things like that on your Devil Gaunt. So like there's one there's a little bit going through the arm. If you turn him over, there's a few more on the gun. You could absolutely, if you wanted to put any extra detail and spend some extra time doing this, you could absolutely paint these green. They'd be absolutely fine, and it might look pretty good. I just don't have the patience all the time, really. But you could absolutely do that, and it would look really good as well. But if you want to follow my scheme completely, then ignore them, and then just try and get other things painted. So, as I said, we're going to do the claw as well. That's going to be green. I'm going to finish doing all that, and then I'll show you what we are going to do with the Devourer as soon as that's done. Okay, so once the claws and the hooves have been picked out, the next stage is to put a little bit of the Warpstone on the front of the Devourer. As you can see, it's really dark right now, and what we want is a nice transition between the front and the back, and it gets brighter as it gets to the front, almost like a heat. It's been heated or something. I know it doesn't kind of work like that, but I think it kind of gives it, and it gives a nice feel. It gives it a nice transition of colour, makes it pop a little bit more. So that's what we're going to do. So we are going to do, I don't want to call it a dry brush because it's not a dry brush, but you kind of work it the same way as you would if it was a dry brush. So it's more of an overbrush actually. So what we're doing is we've got some Warpstone Glow on our brush here, and what we do is we focus on the tip, and then we pull the colour down about 2/3. So if the camera will pick that up, hopefully it will. Not so much on that side. But yeah, that's all we're focusing on. We don't want too much colour on there. About there, that's pretty much where you want it. And that should be absolutely fine. We can move straight into the next colour now, because it doesn't matter. In fact, if it's a little bit wet, it'll blend it a little bit better. So next colour, nice and quick, is Moot Green. It's very, very, very bright. What we do is do exactly the same thing again. Okay. Focus on the tip, because we want the tip to be nice and bright at the end of this.
It's time to stop.
So pull it down around, pull the colour from the top and then work it down. We want that to go about halfway down the devourer, something like that. And then once again, nice and quick into our next colour, which in this case is Flash Gits Yellow, and we work the top. Okay, get the majority of that off, and then shake it. Don't forget to shake your colours. Exactly the same thing again, getting rid of, this time about 70% of the paint on there, and then we are going to work the tip once again, one last time.
Stop it. Get some help.
And that'll hopefully give us a nice transition between the yellow into the green, into the slightly dark green, into the Caliban green. And there we go. Now you will need to do this twice on the Flash Gits Yellow, because we want the very, very tip to be, you know, almost pure yellow. So the top fifth, let's say, do that again. And then you'll have something that looks like that. When it dries, the contrast won't be as much. It will look more like one of the ones that I did earlier, when the transition isn't that great. It doesn't look like a traffic light system. But yeah, once that's dried, we will then base it. Okay, now to base it. This part is slightly different to what you do with a normal Tyranid, because obviously, as you can see, what they have is that bar that sits into the base. I didn't like that because it doesn't give you much flexibility of how you can base them. So what I do is I clip it off. Now use your clippers that you would use to get the models off the sprue, and all you're doing is you are cutting away at that bar. Okay, make sure you're not catching the hoof, and then the last piece. There you go. So once that bar has gone, as you can see, you've got a relatively flat surface, but it's not quite flat enough, considering that all of the weight of the model has got to be supported by this like 3mm square spot. So my advice would be, get yourself either a nice sharp hobby knife or a file, a diamond file like this. So with that, all you're doing is, I mean, you shouldn't really pull your knife towards you, but I find that you have a bit more control if you do it like this, to be perfectly honest. Once again, kids, be careful when you're doing this. Get an adult to do it for you, or at the very least help you. And what you'll have is a much flatter surface to hold on to your base. As you can see, I also left the bottom just as Caliban green, because when you see the model it's going to be like that, so, you know. Anyway, it's kind of lazy, but whatever. So the way I've based my army, if you've noticed already when I've been showing you my other models, I've done almost like a cityscape. I kind of want this to be an invasion force that has landed on a planet that has some form of infrastructure. It's got roads on it and stuff like that. So I've got two bases here that I prepared earlier. Really, really nice and simple. If you're interested, I might do a tutorial on them. I say if you're interested, I will do a tutorial on them. I think I'm probably going to choose this one, I think. A little bit more interesting, I think. And now, this is one of the most important things. Get yourself, for this at the very least, some decent super glue. I'm using Gorilla Glue. I've tried using, you know, the pound shop stuff. It's okay for actually making these bases, because you know, you can swamp the entire thing in it and it's fine. But when it comes to sticking your models on, I recommend this. It's really, really, really good. And it also doesn't smell all that bad either. One of the complaints that I have personally with the pound shop and Poundland and the dollar store stuff is that it smells kind of like the guy at the end of what I imagine the guy at the end of RoboCop to smell like. And then, yeah, this is just much better. This smells not too bad either. As long as you're in a ventilated room, you should be absolutely fine. Still smells like super glue, but just not as strong. So, put a little tiny dab on your model. it is quite thick, so sometimes it can get a little bit, it can take a little bit of time to get running down, and then all you want is a tiny little dab just on there, and you get your base. And this is why it's important to have quite decent super glue, because you are putting the entire faith of the model into that little 3mm square spot. If you have a decent super glue, it should hold. The other models that I've had are absolutely fine. I've been using this super glue on all of those, and I've never had a problem. No models have fallen over. Even the tiny little feet that you get on the Gene Stealers, they've all been based exactly the same, and they've not come off. They've not randomly broken or anything like that. After a few seconds of holding it, it should be absolutely fine. And then good old Darren over here, Darren the Devil Gaunt, can join the rest of his units. So there you go, there's our little Gaunt, completely finished, based and ready for the tabletop, most importantly. And he can slip in quite easily, in with his friends over here, and as a unit they look pretty cool. So thanks for that, guys, and I'll do a slightly bigger unit next time to make it a little bit more interesting and show you some of the other things that I would do with the slightly larger models that I've not done with these guys, like picking out some of the smaller details. So yeah, see you then.